My name is David. I am 54 years old, though most mornings my reflection looks closer to 60. I've worked with my hands all my life. Carpentry, renovation. The kind of work that leaves splinters in your palms and patience in your blood. For most of my adult years, I believed effort could fix anything. A door that won't close, a marriage that won't breathe, a son who won't look at you the same way. My son, Benjamin, turned 22 this spring. I used to know him. We shared the same slow humor, the same stubbornness that made apologies feel like defeat. We built things together, shelves, a treehouse, small projects that seemed immortal when he was young. I thought those hours in the garage were the kind of memories that outlast betrayal. I was wrong. When his mother, Linda, and I divorced, he was 9. She kept the house, and I didn't fight her for it. I told myself children need stability, that it was nobler to let her have the familiar walls and me the silence. I rented a small apartment with hollow walls and every other weekend marked in red on the calendar. I became a visitor in my own story, but I still showed up. I never missed a birthday, never missed a parent-teacher meeting. I was always the man standing in the back row with sawdust on his jacket, clapping a second too late because I didn't want to embarrass him. I paid support without delay, sent extra when Linda said she was struggling, and kept a quiet account growing for his future. It was my way of loving him, silently, responsibly, like a man who believes constancy can substitute for presence. For a few years, it worked. He still called me Dad. He still asked for help with his projects, still trusted my hands more than Google. But time erodes things you don't protect. By 13, his tone had changed. Shorter sentences, longer pauses. His weekends with me became negotiations instead of plans. There was always a birthday party, a group trip, some vague thing that needed him elsewhere. I learned to stop asking for explanations. Then, 3 years ago, Linda married Ryan. He was everything I wasn't. Sharp suits, white smile, that effortless confidence men like me only see in commercials. He sold real estate, talked fast, laughed louder. His life was a highlight reel. Yacht photos, steak dinners, vacations framed by sunsets. The kind of man who performs fatherhood like a luxury brand, polished, temporary, unforgettable in pictures. Benjamin adored him almost instantly. Ryan drove a Tesla. I drove a dented pickup. Ryan talked about investments and travel. I talked about fixing fences and paying bills. You can't compete with spectacle when your currency is quiet endurance. It began subtly. Ryan offered to pick Benjamin up early from my weekends. "We're heading to the lake," he'd text. Ben wanted to join, always phrased like a favor, as if I should be grateful for the invitation I wasn't part of. Then came the gifts. New phone, designer clothes, front row tickets to things I'd never heard of. I told myself it was harmless. Teenagers change. They drift. That's what I said, drift. As if what was happening wasn't a quiet erasure. At 17, Benjamin stopped calling me Dad. Not out loud, not directly, he just avoided saying it altogether. "Hey," he'd say. Or, "What's up?" I noticed the absence of the word more than I'd ever noticed its presence. Still, I kept showing up. I'd drive 2 hours to his soccer games, even when he barely waved. I'd send money for his textbooks and pretend not to notice that Ryan's name was listed as emergency contact on his college forms. The strange how you can feel someone replacing you one signature at a time. Linda said I was being dramatic. "He's just adjusting," she told me. "Ryan's good for him. You should be happy he has more support." But support was never the problem. It was visibility. Every time Ryan appeared, I became translucent. Then came Christmas. It was my year to host. I'd planned everything. Cooked his favorite roast, wrapped a set of custom tools for the car he'd been restoring, even fixed up the guest room. But that morning his message came, "Can't make it, Dad. Ryan's family is doing something big this year. Promise I'll come by later in the week." I stared at the text for a long time before replying, "Sure. Have fun." It was a simple lie. I didn't have fun. I spent the evening watching snowfall blur the streetlights while the roast cooled untouched. A week later, my niece sent me a video from social media. "Look who's famous now," she joked. It was Ryan's Christmas party. A mansion wrapped in golden light. Music, laughter, glasses clinking. Then I saw Benjamin. Champagne glass raised, cheeks flushed, smile easy. "To my real family," he said. The crowd cheered. He turned to Ryan, eyes shining. "And to the man who showed me what a father should be." I watched it twice before understanding what I'd heard. Then again, slower, as if the repetition would dull the pain. Didn't. The words hit harder each time, like hammer strikes finding new cracks. The video was 37 seconds long. Took me years to recover from it. I didn't call him. I didn't confront Linda. I didn't write angry letters or demand apologies. I just went silent. Because sometimes silence is the only dignity left to a man who's lost his title. In the weeks that followed, I replayed everything: the birthdays I paid for, the nights I stayed late fixing his bike, the savings account I'd built for his future. I wondered when exactly I'd stopped being a father and started being a sponsor. The truth settled slowly, like dust after a demolition. I hadn't lost him on Christmas. I'd lost him the day I accepted that love could survive without gratitude. Linda posted a photo the next morning. All of them together. Her, Ryan, Benjamin, and Ryan's parents around a lavish table. The caption read, "Family means everything." I stared at it until the screen dimmed. Then I set the phone down, walked to the garage, and sat in the quiet. The smell of oil and cedar filled the air. The last pieces of my old life. There was a photograph pinned to the wall. Benjamin at 12, holding a wooden birdhouse we'd built together. His grin was wide, proud, certain. He hadn't yet learned how easily love can be redirected. I left the photo there, even when I stopped coming to the garage as often. It stayed pinned like evidence of something I once did right. People think betrayal comes loudly, shouting, slam doors, final words. But the worst kind is quiet. It seeps in, disguised as growing up, as moving on, as someone else stepping into your place with a brighter smile. That winter, the silence between us became permanent. Messages unanswered, calls avoided. When I sent money for his birthday, Linda replied, "Thanks, I'll make sure he gets it." I never heard from him directly. By spring, I had stopped expecting anything. I told myself he was busy, that he'd come around once he matured. But in truth, I knew the gap had hardened. Ryan wasn't just a new man in his life. He was the revision of the story. The version where I'd never been more than a temporary chapter. I didn't hate Benjamin. Couldn't. You don't hate the person holding the knife when you're the one who handed it to them. That summer, I drove past Ryan's marina by accident. I saw Benjamin there, laughing with him, loading something onto the boat. For a moment, I almost stopped, almost rolled down the window, almost waved. But then Ryan placed a hand on his shoulder, and I saw it. The ease, the belonging, the unguarded trust I'd spent years earning and still lost. I kept driving. I didn't look back. Not because I didn't want to, but because I couldn't afford to see what being replaced looked like in daylight. In the evenings now, the house feels too quiet. Sometimes I catch myself setting an extra plate, out of habit. I still check my phone on holidays, half expecting a message that never comes. It's not hope anymore. It's reflex. I used to think fatherhood was a job you could never quit. Now I know it's a contract that can be revoked without notice. And yet, somewhere beneath the bitterness, there's still a part of me that waits. Not for forgiveness, but for recognition. For the day he looks around and realizes that real fathers don't come with champagne and yachts. They come with silence, with patience, with hands that never stopped working for him, even when his back was turned. Until then, I'll stay quiet. Silence has become the only language that doesn't humiliate me. Because sometimes the loudest way to love someone who has chosen another man as his father is to say nothing at all. Money has a memory. It remembers every reason you gave it away. Every promise, every plea, every lie you told yourself about love being practical. For 15 years, I sent $4,000 a month into a trust for Benjamin. It was supposed to be a seed for his future. College, rent, the down payment on his first home. I never touched it, not once. I built it quietly, the way a man builds faith. Small deposit by small deposit, convinced it would grow into something sacred. After the Christmas toast, I sat at my desk and opened the account for the first time in months. The balance stared back at me, nearly $100,000. I remember thinking how strange it was that betrayal had a number. I could quantify my mistake down to the last cent. The next morning, I stopped the automatic transfers. One click. Years of habit undone in silence. Then I printed the paperwork, read the fine print, and realized the trust included clauses I'd forgotten. Safeguards I'd written long ago, assuming I might need protection from bad luck, not from my own son. To withdraw anything over $5,000, Benjamin needed my written approval. It was a simple control, a quiet leash. I left it there, untouched. 2 weeks passed before the first request came. Hey Dad, need some help covering a trip. Spring break. Florida. Not too crazy, promise. I stared at the message. The word Dad hit me like static. I could almost hear Ryan behind it, the man funding the illusion that I'd been replaced. I typed a reply, then erased it. Typed again. Finally, I wrote, "Sorry, can't approve that." Sent. Nothing else. No explanation, no warmth. Just truth. The second message came a month later. Car accident. Fender bender. Need repairs before I can get to work. Estimates about $3,000. Again, I declined. I told him the trust wasn't a safety net for irresponsibility. Linda called the next evening. Her tone was sharp, the way people sound when they're used to your compliance. "David, what are you doing? He needs that car." "He has a father for that now," I said. Silence. Then the familiar sigh, the same one she used when Benjamin lied about his homework, or when I came home late from work years ago. A sigh that meant, "You're being unreasonable again." "I can't believe you're punishing him for one stupid video," she said. "I'm not punishing him. I'm respecting his choice. He picked his family. Now they can fund his adventures." She hung up before I could finish. That night, I sat at the kitchen table with a glass of bourbon and the glow of my laptop. The cursor blinked at me like an accusation. I opened spreadsheets I hadn't looked at in years. Tuition, rent transfers, grocery allowances, all those invisible threads that tied me to him. I realized I'd been subsidizing not just a lifestyle but an illusion, the idea that I was still part of his life. When you love someone long enough, you start mistaking dependency for connection. You believe that as long as they need your money, they still need you. But that night, I saw it clearly. My generosity had become anesthesia, numbing him from the truth that I existed. I began trimming. The rent subsidy went first, then the insurance supplement, then the monthly allowance I justified as teaching responsibility. I left the trust intact but sealed, untouchable without my word. The rest vanished like smoke. For weeks there was quiet. Then came the ripple, small at first. Benjamin's texts grew more polite, almost mechanical. "Hope you're doing okay. Any chance the trust could help with tuition next term?" I didn't reply for 2 days. When I finally did, it was a single line. "Let's talk about accountability first." He didn't answer. A few nights later, Linda left a voicemail. Her voice was tired now, less angry, more pleading. "He's embarrassed, David. He doesn't understand why you're being so cold. You were always his rock." No, I thought. Rocks don't bend. They just get stepped on until they crack. By late spring, the silence between us had changed shape. It wasn't avoidance anymore. It was distance with definition. He had stopped pretending and I had stopped paying. I started noticing the smallest freedoms. Weekends without requests, paychecks that stayed mine, evenings where I didn't flinch at the sound of a notification. My life shrank in size but grew in clarity. Then, one night in May, I got a call from an unfamiliar number. "Ryan." "Hey, David," he began, his voice smooth, practiced. "I wanted to talk about Ben." I almost laughed. "That's a first." He hesitated. "Look, he's been struggling a bit. Work's slow. Car issues. He's trying his best. And, well, I was hoping maybe you could loosen up the trust a little. Just to get him through this rough patch." I could picture him, expensive watch catching the light, the tone of a man who assumes the world will bend for him. "I'm sure you'll manage," I said. "You've been a great father figure, after all." His charm faltered. Come on, David. Don't make this personal. It's always been personal. He didn't call again. A week later, Benjamin texted. Just 5 words, you really don't care anymore. I stared at them for a long time before replying. Caring isn't the same as financing. He didn't answer. I didn't expect him to. The months that followed were quiet in the way winter is quiet. Not peaceful, just frozen. The distance between us became something I could measure, like temperature. He posted pictures sometimes. Parties, beach trips, new clothes. Ryan always somewhere in the background. The captions were all brightness and youth, the kind that hides debt behind filters. Then, midsummer, the posts stopped. No more photos, no more smiling faces. Silence online, silence in real life. I found out from a mutual friend. Benjamin had lost his job. Ryan had started charging him rent. Apparently, the yacht life came with fine print. When I heard, I didn't feel vindicated. I felt something heavier, pity twisted with pride. Because for the first time, he was learning the cost of the words he'd toasted. A week later, I saw his name flash on my phone. I didn't answer right away. I let it ring out twice. On the 3rd try, I picked up. Dad, he said. The word came out uncertain, cracked. I need some time. Things are hard. I know, I said. I didn't mean what I said back then. I closed my eyes. Yes, you did. You just didn't mean to live with it. He didn't argue. The silence that followed was long, raw, almost human. Can I come home for a bit? He finally asked. My instinct was to say yes, to rush, to fix, to shelter. But that's how I'd lost him in the first place. You can, I said slowly. But there are rules this time. You work. You pay your part. You stand on your own feet. He agreed too quickly, the way people do when desperation replaces pride. After the call, I sat in the dark, staring at the old birdhouse still hanging by the window. Its paint had peeled, but it was still standing, crooked, weathered, but intact. Maybe that's what fatherhood really is. Not unconditional love, but conditional survival. That night, I reactivated one transfer, a modest one, just enough to cover his first week's rent when he returned. A gesture, not a rescue, because love, when it hardens, doesn't vanish. It just learns the cost of mercy. And mercy, like money, should never be given to those who mistake it for weakness. At first, I thought his return would feel like redemption, that when Benjamin came back home, some old rhythm might fall into place. The soft thud of his steps down the hallway, the way he used to hum under his breath when concentrating. But what came through the door wasn't my son. It was a man carrying the weight of his own mistakes, looking for shelter under a roof he'd once rejected. He arrived with one suitcase and the quiet shame of someone who's learned that pride doesn't pay rent. His eyes darted around the living room like it was a stranger's house. I didn't rush to comfort him. I just pointed toward the spare room and said, "It's yours, if you follow the rules." He nodded, wordless. I noticed his hands, rough, cracked, marked by work he wasn't used to doing. For a fleeting second, I felt something close to pride. He was finally earning his bruises. For the first few days, we lived like ghosts under the same roof. He woke early, left without saying much, came home late. I didn't ask where he went. He cleaned up after himself, kept his head down. The silence between us wasn't angry anymore. It was measured, like two men cautiously rebuilding trust one quiet meal at a time. On the 4th morning, I woke to the sound of the lawn mower. I looked out the window and saw him pushing it through the tall grass, sweat glistening on his back. It wasn't the act itself that moved me. It was the unspoken apology in it. For years, I had mowed that same lawn alone, waiting for gratitude that never came. Now, he was the one cutting through the overgrowth. That small act became our first truce. He started cooking dinners. Nothing fancy, pasta, grilled chicken, leftovers turned into something edible. We ate together without saying much. Once, after dinner, he told me Ryan had raised his rent again before kicking him out entirely. Said it was time I learned responsibility, Benjamin said, forcing a laugh that didn't reach his eyes. I didn't gloat. I just nodded. The lesson had already been learned. It didn't need my commentary. Weeks passed. Slowly, the stiffness between us began to fade. He found a part-time job at a repair shop nearby. Long hours, low pay, but it gave him something to do with his hands. One evening, he came home with grease on his shirt and a spark in his eyes I hadn't seen since he was a boy in my garage. "You were right about working with tools," he said. "It clears your head." I almost said, "I've always been right about you," but held my tongue. Some truths don't need witnesses. Linda called a few times during those months. Her tone swung between concern and resentment. "He's changed, hasn't he?" she'd ask, as if fishing for evidence of her own guilt. I'd tell her he was doing fine, that he was working, paying rent, keeping his word. She never asked about me. That part of her curiosity had died years ago. By midsummer, the house felt alive again. Not warm, but functional. He paid his share of the bills, mowed the lawn without being asked, fixed the squeaky door. In small, unspoken ways, he began to earn back what his words had cost. One night, over dinner, he asked, "Do you still talk to Mom much?" "Only when she calls," I said. He hesitated. "She doesn't say it, but I think she regrets how things went. With you. With everything." I didn't respond. Regret is a cheap currency. People spend it freely when they realize the bill has come due. He looked down at his plate. "Ryan's different now. Distant. I think he's going through money problems." I took a sip of water, pretending not to care. But inside, I felt the old sting of irony. The man who bought affection on credit was finally bankrupt. "He'll figure it out," I said. Benjamin nodded slowly. He said something about selling the boat. That sentence felt like poetry, indulgence dismantling itself. In August, he surprised me. He handed me an envelope, his share of the month's bills and then some. "For groceries," he said. I almost told him to keep it, but I didn't. Accepting it mattered more than refusing it. It meant we'd finally reached equilibrium. Not father and son yet, but two men sharing the same truth. Respect isn't inherited. It's rebuilt. Still, every so often, I'd catch him looking at me when he thought I wasn't watching. There was something behind his gaze. Guilt, maybe admiration, maybe both. One night, while fixing a broken chair, he asked quietly, "Why didn't you just give up on me?" The question landed heavier than he knew. I set down the screwdriver, studied the grain of the wood. "Because fathers don't get to quit," I said. "But they do get to stop paying for lessons that should have been learned for free." He smiled, small but real. "Guess I finally learned mine." "Maybe," I said. "We'll see if it sticks." Fall came. He kept his job, started taking night classes. He even saved up for a used car, nothing fancy but his. I co-signed, nothing more. That boundary mattered. In September, Linda called again. "I saw Benjamin last week," she said. "He looks happy." "He is," I replied. She hesitated. "He told me you've been helping him, but not financially." "That's right." There was a pause. "He said you're different now. Colder." "I'm the same," I said. "He's just feeling the weather for the first time." We didn't speak again after that. By October, Benjamin had saved enough to move out. The day he packed, the house felt smaller but lighter too. He loaded his things into the car with quiet efficiency. When he was done, he turned to me, uncertain. "I don't really know how to thank you," he said. "Just don't waste what you've learned." He nodded. "I won't." Before he left, he walked over to the garage. The birdhouse still hung there, sun-bleached and crooked. He touched it gently, then turned back to me. "We built that together, didn't we?" "Yeah," I said. "It's still standing." He smiled. "Guess that's something." After he drove away, I stood in the doorway for a long time, the echo of his engine fading down the street. The house was quiet again, but it didn't feel empty this time. It felt earned. A week later, an envelope arrived. A small note inside with a folded receipt from the repair shop. On it, he'd written, "First full paycheck. Thought you'd want proof." I pinned it to the wall beside the birdhouse photo. Not as a trophy, but as evidence that sometimes the harshest lessons grow the deepest roots. People like Ryan never understand that. They think love is measured by what you give, not what you withhold. But withholding can be mercy too, the kind that forces a man to find his own footing. By winter, Benjamin stopped asking for advice. He didn't need to. He'd learned the rhythm of work, the satisfaction of stability. I still kept the trust locked, untouched, not as punishment but as principle. When he no longer needed it, then and only then would he deserve it. Every now and then, I catch myself wondering if Ryan knows how it ended, if he realizes the boy he once dazzled with toys now fixes things with calloused hands instead. Maybe he does. Maybe that's punishment enough. Sometimes, late at night, I walk out to the yard. The air carries the faint hum of distant traffic, the world still turning without me. I look at the birdhouse swaying gently in the wind, its edges splintered but holding. That's how I see my life now, weathered, imperfect, but standing. The illusions have fallen. What's left isn't bitterness. It's balance. And balance, I've learned, is just the quiet mercy of finally being done pretending. When Benjamin left again, the house didn't echo anymore. It exhaled. The silence that once felt like punishment had become a companion. Measured, clean, deserved. I filled the evenings with small things. Repairing tools, reading old manuals, taking slow walks through the neighborhood where people still waved out of habit. The world hadn't changed. Only I had. I'd learned that peace isn't the absence of family. It's the absence of illusion. Months passed. Autumn thinned into winter. The phone stayed mostly quiet except for one text every few weeks. Doing fine, Dad. Just those 3 words, always punctuated, always deliberate. I never asked for details. When a man starts building himself back up, the best thing you can do is stay out of his way. By January, he was steady again. Working full-time at the repair shop, renting a small apartment near downtown. I saw him once at the grocery store. Grease under his nails, hair grown longer, posture straighter. He didn't notice me at first. When he did, he froze, then smiled in a way that wasn't rehearsed. We talked briefly. Weather, work, nothing sentimental. But as he walked away, he said, "I'm making it on my own now." I nodded, letting pride sit quietly where old pain used to live. Around that time, Ryan's name started reappearing in whispers. His real estate empire, the yacht, the weekend photographs, gone. Bad investments, rumors of debts. The kind of fall that comes when a man mistakes applause for stability. Linda called once, not to gossip but to ask for advice about refinancing. Her voice trembled between embarrassment and nostalgia. I told her the same thing I'd once told our son. Learn to stand on what's left. She didn't reply. Benjamin visited again in early spring. Drove up in the same battered car he'd bought with his own money. When he stepped out, he carried himself differently, shoulders squared, eyes clear. He looked like a man who'd stopped waiting for rescue. He handed me a small box. Inside was a set of new screwdrivers. "Figured you'd worn the old ones out," he said. I laughed, the sound foreign in my own throat. It was the first gift he'd ever given me that wasn't paid for with my own money. Over dinner he told me everything. How Ryan had fired him from the company to cut costs, how he tried to ask for help and been told to grow up, how the rent had doubled until he couldn't keep up. "I thought he cared," Benjamin said quietly. "But I think he just liked being the hero. I didn't say I told you so. Some lessons lose meaning when spoken aloud. I simply said, real fathers don't need an audience." He nodded, eyes damp but steady. "I see that now." Later that night, he stood in the doorway before leaving. "I don't deserve what you've done," he said. "Then keep deserving it," I answered. "Keep earning what you already have." After he left, I sat by the window watching his taillights fade into darkness. The feeling wasn't triumph. It was something quieter, heavier, recognition. The boy who once toasted another man now carried my patience in his spine. Weeks became months. We spoke often. He asked for advice about work, about saving, about the small domestic battles adulthood brings. He didn't ask for money. That silence was worth more than any repayment. One afternoon in June, I drove to his apartment unannounced. The place was modest, second-hand furniture, Walls bare except for a single framed photo on the shelf. Him at 12, holding the crooked birdhouse we'd built. The same photo that hung in my garage. He'd taken his own copy years ago. "Keeps me honest," he said when he caught me staring. Honesty. Such a small word for the distance we'd traveled. He brewed coffee, stronger than mine, and we sat on the balcony overlooking the parking lot. The sun burned low, turning everything gold. "I've been thinking," he said, "about the trust. I don't think I want it." I studied him. "Why?" "Because I finally know what it costs to make $1. Taking that money now feels like undoing the work." Pride swelled through me. Not loud, not boastful, just clean. "Independence," I said quietly, "is the only inheritance worth giving." He smiled. "Guess that means you succeeded." For the first time in years, I believed it. Still, I released a small part of the fund later that summer, a gesture, not a reward. 15,000, enough to help him start saving for something of his own. I told him there'd be more when he no longer needed it. He didn't argue. He simply thanked me, voice steady, eyes clear. A month later he called, laughing. "Dad," he said, unforced, natural. "I got promoted. Full-time, benefits, everything." I sat there holding the phone, listening to that one word echo through the room. Dad. For years it had been an obligation. Now it was a choice. In August, he invited me to dinner with his coworkers. "I want them to meet my father," he said. "Not stepfather, not David, not the man who paid the bills. Just father." When we arrived, he introduced me easily, confidently. I shook hands, smiled, played along, but inside something small and tired unclenched. For all the years I'd spent proving myself, the validation came not from apology or ceremony, but from 4 simple words. "This is my dad." Later that night, after everyone had left, Ryan called. I didn't answer the first time. On the second ring, I picked up. His voice was rough, stripped of the charm it once wore like armor. "You were right," he said. "About everything." "I know," I said. "I just wanted you to know he talks about you now. Says you taught him what a man should be." I said nothing. "I messed up," Ryan whispered. "If you see him, tell him I'm proud." "I think he already knows who is," I replied. Then I ended the call. Not from spite, just finality. Some conversations end because there's nothing left to rescue. When Benjamin and I next met, he didn't mention Ryan. He didn't need to. The man had become a lesson, not a presence. We talked instead about work, about the future, about the kind of home he wanted to build someday. "I'll do it right this time," he said. "Start small, pay it off, no loans I can't afford." "Good," I told him. "Build something that lasts." He grinned. "Like that birdhouse?" "Exactly like that." Now, when people ask about my family, I keep the answer simple. I tell them my son's name is Benjamin. I don't explain the years between us, the silence, the fracture. I don't mention the toast or the fund or the long nights spent staring at a balance sheet instead of a photograph. All they need to know is that he found his way back, not through guilt, but through growth. Sometimes I still walk to the garage at dusk. The birdhouse hangs in the same place, weather-worn but steady. I run my hand along the edge, feel the splinters, and think of him as he is now, rough around the edges, built to endure. People talk about forgiveness like it's an event, a line you cross. But it's not. It's a maintenance task, like oiling a hinge or sanding a rough board. You don't do it once. You keep doing it quietly, for as long as the thing still matters. I've forgiven him not because he asked, but because I finally could. Because forgiveness, I've learned, isn't for the one who left. It's for the one who stayed. I see him every few weeks now. Sometimes he brings groceries, sometimes tools, sometimes just conversation. The house feels lighter when he's here. When he leaves, the silence that follows isn't empty anymore. It's earned. One evening, before driving off, he turned to me and said, "You never gave up, did you?" I smiled. "I tried to, but some habits are worth keeping." He laughed, waved, and drove into the fading light. As his taillights disappeared, I realized the truth I'd been circling for years. Fatherhood isn't about blood, or money, or the roles other people assign. It's about endurance, the quiet kind that doesn't need applause. And sometimes, when the world finally goes still, I ask myself the same question that's haunted me through every season of this story. Was I wrong to stop paying for love? The wind through the yard answers softly, moving the old birdhouse on its string, creaking but unbroken. Maybe that's all the answer I'll ever need.